The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Major devastation. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. Kentucky, along with other southern and Midwest states, continue the grim task of assessing loss of life and damage after tornadoes devastated those areas.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear on NBC's Meet the Press said he fears the number of those killed in his state will go well beyond 100.
People have lost everything. We're talking in the rescue effort of going door to door. There aren't doors.
Parts of 6 states experienced the deadly tornado outbreak. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson said on CBS Face the Nation, audible alerts helped save lives.
The early warning system, the sirens, and taking action whenever you hear that.
President Biden says he will visit damaged areas at a time that won't hinder the work of first responders. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
President Biden approving a disaster declaration for Kentucky, paving the way for additional federal resources. Federal Emergency Management Agency Administrator Deanne Criswell saying severe weather events like Friday's tornadoes represent a growing challenge.
I think that there's a lot that we need to do as a nation. There's going to be a lot to learn from this event and the events that we saw through the summer. We're seeing more intense storms, severe weather, whether it's hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. And one of the focuses my agency is going to have is how can we start to reduce the impacts of these events as they continue to grow.
Deanne Criswell on ABC's This Week. Scientists worldwide still trying to assess the threat posed by the COVID-19 Omicron variant. White House advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci.
For now, if you want to be optimally protected, absolutely get a booster if you've already had your primary vaccination.
Dr. Fauci on ABC's This Week. Austria is ending lockdown restrictions for those vaccinated against COVID-19 across most of the country. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Armed smash-and-grab looters breaking into an exotic car dealership in Chicago and stealing millions in merchandise.
This incident is the latest in a string of violent smash and grabs happening across the country. In this case, a man with a gun allegedly stood by the entrance of the car dealership while another guy used a hammer to smash display cases and steal luxury watches worth millions of dollars. This happened less than a week after Chicago's Democrat Mayor Lori Lightfoot suggested that retailers aren't taking adequate measures to prevent crime. That controversial statement got swift backlash. Chicago Alderman Raymond Lopez said, quote, blaming the individuals who have put their blood, sweat, and tears to pursue the American dream by opening businesses as the problem and not chastising the criminals is outrageous.
Fox's Christina Coleman. Lots of snow and rain for Northern California.
Millions in Northern California are bracing for what could be an early, very white and wet Christmas. Up to 10 feet of snow is forecast to blanket the Sierra Nevada mountaintops in the coming days. Down below, a lot of much-needed rain will fall, and forecasters are saying this could be a storm that will likely be remembered for years to come. It'll be wet in the Bay Area starting Sunday, and heavy showers will continue till Tuesday, with snow in the higher peaks. Another storm midweek could deliver near continuous snowfall. The Sierra Avalanche Center says the heavy snow, coupled with strong winds, could produce large and destructive avalanches. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
Graphic novelist Anne Rice has died due to complications from a stroke. She was 80. Rice's son announcing her death late Saturday on her Facebook page and his Twitter feed. Anne Rice was widely known for her best-selling novel, Interview with a Vampire. The 1976 book was adapted into a movie starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt in 1994. It was also slated for a TV series next year in 2022. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a great way to start a week, Jose. I'm going to say that every day this week, and I'm so happy that I can say it 4 more times before we have to go into hibernation again. You know, I hear this, oh my gosh, thanks God it's Friday, and oh, hooray, hooray, it's Friday. Not me. Friday is my least favorite day of the week. I love Mondays because it means I got a whole week ahead of me to engage in tall tales, to engage with with tailgaters, to spin all the yarns we spin here on Tall Tales, to hear Jose honking that horn every time I say something that's an exaggeration or facetious. You hardly ever get to use it, right, Jose?
Hardly ever.
Let me try that again. You hardly ever get to use it, right, Jose? There you go. All right, let's go straight to Zemi Ikotny. That's that part of the program. By the way, did you know that Mike Wallace, Chris Wallace sold out and went to CNN? Wow.
Broke the news this morning.
Yeah.
Last night for them.
He used to do Meet the Press. I would never do that. I don't care how many millions of dollars, and they probably would like to. Bob, we'll give you $5 million a year if you'll bring Tall Tales to CNN. No way, Jose. All right, so I look at the editorials from each of our daily newspapers. I've got my blue pencil here. I grade them very stringently, and if one is better than the other, I give the better of the two the coveted Blue Star, which is a cause for great celebration in the editorial boardroom of the winning newspaper. A lot of times there is no blue star because the blue star never goes by default. The Daily News, the Post, let me start with the Daily News here. I almost wanted to start with the Post. The Daily News, as you were, the Post is going to get 2 bites off the apple today. They start out with today, GovGuam needs help to help make broadband internet more available and affordable. Now, you'll recall that I've said this a million times. What I'm looking for from our government, from any government, is an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing the basic government services and at least a break-even basis, not going in debt. I'm not so sure that broadband internet is a basic government service. I tend to think that it's not a government service. I tend to think that telephone is not a government service. Now, because of the way Guam developed after World War, actually from the time the Americans chased the Spanish out, because there was almost no civilian economy, the government of Guam got into what are known as proprietary functions. You can divide government functions into 2 basic classes, proprietary and government. Governmental functions are things like jails, elections. See if I can think of another example. Police, a classic example of a governmental function. Proprietary functions are things that can be done by private companies as opposed to the government. Proprietary functions would be like providing electricity, providing water, and providing, as far as I'm concerned, broadband internet service to the people of the island. It's not a governmental function. We have how many different companies, broadband companies on the island? 4 or 5? Yeah. And given the way our capitalist system works, the profit incentive and competition, if broadband is practical, they'll do it. It's only if it's not practical or practicable would the government be tempted to do it. And I don't think it's a good idea. But here's what they're saying. From killing boredom to staying connected with school or work, patience, reliable and fast internet has been a top necessity. Wow. How long has it been since you heard that strange tone on your phone as you connected with a dial-up connection, Jose? Remember that?
It's been a while.
Yeah. The adjustments since the pandemic started have been difficult mentally, physically, and emotionally. Okay, therefore we got to have broadband internet. Yeah. Glitchy, unreliable internet connections make that worse. Wow. School or business meetings rely on how strong our internet connections are. Though some aspects of school and work are getting back to normal, we can't ignore the necessity of high-speed internet. Broadband is key to expanding educational opportunities and makes telemedicine possible, allowing patients to get internet, as you were, to get abortions without ever setting foot in a doctor's office. It's also vital to businesses in a number of industries. Just ask a company that has employees working from home during the Wuhan virus pandemic how critical it is. Couldn't you say the same thing about electric lights?
Let's centralize gas stations.
Yeah, it's gas. Yeah, let's have the government subsidize gas stations. The U.S. ranks 17th in the world in broadband internet speeds, far behind the United Arab Emirates, who has so much more oil than we'll ever had. There's just no comparison.
Except in 2020.
Yeah, South Korea, China. Guam is striving to climb that ranking with initiative such as GTA's Fiber to the Neighborhood program. That's not Guam, that's GTA, which used to be a government utility, was bought out by private companies, been doing a whole lot better now than it did as a government utility. The need for high-speed internet is ever more important these days. It's critical infrastructure, just like power, water, and roads. I already talked about power and water. I don't know that internet is as critical as roads, since we really don't have roads on our island. What we have are longitudinal sets of potholes. The government of Guam applied for broadband infrastructure grant under the National Telecommunications Information Administration's $288 million broadband infrastructure program. The money would be administered by the Office of Technology and go to telecommunications providers, according to Tyrone Titano, director of BOSAP. Some people refer to it as the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. I like acronyms, so I call it BOSAP. But there's no guarantee that GovGuam will get its grant application approved. And of course, that's what governments are for, to get grants, right? There needs to be a backup plan, such as tax breaks or sharing part of the cost to incentivize private telecom companies to invest in expanding and improving broadband internet on Guam. No! We don't need government subsidies. If broadband internet is practicable, then these companies will do it. If they can do it and make a profit. If they can't, then the government's got no business doing it. The federal government has provided funding to GovGuam for pandemic relief and more from a huge infrastructure package. The Biden administration's goal is to build back better. I don't really think that's the Biden administration's goal. I think the Biden administration's goal is to build back Democrat.
Or Breakback's doing it.
Yeah. That can't be realized if the government of Guam doesn't do all it can to significantly improve the availability and affordability of broadband internet.
This is a backdoor.
It sure is. It really is. Yeah, backdoor, a nicely decorated back door. Yeah, with mistletoe hanging over the arch.
Looks really, really nice and inviting.
Uh-huh.
But this is where it starts the regulations, the content, speech, availability.
The gradual erosion of the private sector, because you can't compete with the government's resources, because the government doesn't have to make a profit. It can just take your money away from you. Bad, bad, bad. I'm going to give this editorial an F. There you go, Daily News. However, the Daily News is going to have a chance to redeem itself today, because they did have an editorial in Sunday's paper. And here it goes. Our view: not terminating GovGuam workers who defy mandate sets bad precedent. We want to go from setting a really horrible precedent to setting a bad one. If government of Guam employees who continue to refusing to get the Wuhan virus vaccine and continue to be tested weekly for the virus aren't terminated, it would set a horrible precedent. The governor issued an executive order in August requiring government of Guam employees and the executive branch to be vaccinated for the Wuhan virus. Federal court rulings have made it clear that employers, even government employers, can mandate vaccines, and that those who can't or won't be vaccinated due to medical or religious reasons can be required to be tested regularly. A deadline of September 24 was set for GovGuam workers. For those who chose not to be vaccinated, there's an option. Be tested for Wuhan virus on a weekly basis. Failure to meet either requirement means employees face disciplinary action. If employees persist in violating the requirements of the mandate, that disciplinary action must be termination. DOE, Yeah, I like the way they write these editorials. Guam DOE Superintendent John Fernandez. They have to mention, we kind of know it's Guam. Are they going to put the CNMI superintendent in this article? When I was taught basic composition, and when I taught freshman composition, I always emphasized brevity. The fewer words that you can use to get your point across, the better. And I don't remember who said it, but I do remember listening to a rather long-winded speech followed by the apology of the speaker, who said, I know this speech was really too long, and I'm really sorry. I just didn't have time to be brief. It takes longer to be brief than to just fill the words with page with useless words like Guam. Guam DOE Superintendent John Fernandez has 3 employees who refuse to get vaccinated and tested weekly, said they won't be fired. But I'm not taking steps to discipline these employees beyond putting them on designated leave status. Now, I wonder what authority he has to do that. There is a provision for an immediate suspension of 20 days, but the threshold is high, and it automatically goes to the Civil Service Commission. I just don't know that the superintendent has the authority to say, I'm not going to fire you, I'm just going to put you on the designated leave status. Right now we have an emergency, we have an agency that's in compliance with the governor's directive. That's all that's important. Whether or not we're stopping the spread of the disease, whether we're preventing people from getting sick, whether they're teaching the kids anything, secondary, tertiary, we're following the governor's. Let's give John Fernandez a big hand. He's following the governor's directive. Wow. I wonder what kind of medal you get for that. You've seen the Purple Heart Medal.
It's a rose on his nose.
Purple Heart Medal is a purple ribbon with a heart and then a picture of Ben Franklin on the heart. I suppose we could have something like an orange ribbon with a red queen on the bottom with a picture of Lou Leon Guerrero, right? Yeah. The vaccine mandate or weekly testing is a condition of employment. Reasonable legal requirements need to be met or you lose your job, whether you work for the government or the private sector. If the government of Guam doesn't terminate workers who don't comply with this mandate, it will set a precedent. What will keep GovGuam workers from refusing to meet other job requirements, such as dress codes, drug tests, or the use of safety equipment, from saying if you didn't fire those that didn't vaccinate, you can't fire me? Some of the GovGuam workers who have refused compliance argue that the vaccination is a personal choice, that the government shouldn't tell them what to do. But as their employer, the government can tell them what they can or can't do as long as it's legal. Well, I'm not so sure about that. Employees do have a choice, do have a right to choose. Either follow legal mandates or find a new employer. Now, here's an interesting tidbit about the vaccine mandates. And I think let's get out the Law and Order notebooks, Jose. You know, the leading case on mandatory vaccinations, I think almost everybody knows it by now. It's Jacobson versus Massachusetts, a 1905 Supreme Court case where the court upheld the authority of state governments to enforce law that require citizens to be immunized. Interestingly enough, that wasn't the end of Jacobson versus Massachusetts. Now, when the Supreme Court decides a case, one of the things that lawyers always want to know after that is, was the case followed? In other words, has the Supreme Court decided other cases and referred back to the target case as an example of the ratio decidendi, the reason for decision, that the Supreme Court is adopting the decision that it's adopting in the current case? Was the case followed? Well, Jacobson versus Massachusetts was followed. And this doesn't excuse the three, and it probably doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on the whole thing, but it's really interesting from the standpoint of grabbing a Supreme Court case and reciting its precedent in one well-worded sentence doesn't always lead you to the right result. I'm going to talk about a case called Buck versus Bell, which every law student studies in first-year constitutional law. In 1927, the Supreme Court decided Buck versus Bell, ruling that a statute enabling compulsory sterilization of those deemed, quote, unfit, including those with intellectual disabilities, was constitutional. Ironically, there are good grounds to believe that the victim of the decision, Carrie Buck, or her daughter, were not intellectually disabled, but victims of class-based mistreatment. They didn't have systemic racism to blame everything on back in those days.
Systemic intellectualism?
Yeah. Justice Holmes. Now, everybody knows that Oliver Wendell Holmes was the greatest Supreme Court justice we ever had, right? Yeah, very famous, Oliver Wendell Holmes. We have seen, and this is what he said, we've seen more than once that public welfare may call upon the best citizens for their lives. It would be strange if it could not call upon those who already sap the strength of the state for these lesser sacrifices, often not to be felt such by those concerned, in order to prevent our being swamped with incompetence. I would never want to read this at the 36th Guam legislature. Sergeant at Arms, get that man out of here. It is better for all the world if, instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for a crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. Wow. The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover the fallopian, as you were, for cutting the fallopian tubes. Jacobson versus Massachusetts, 197 U.S. 11. And he winds up with this: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough.
Wow.
The power of Jacobson versus Massachusetts. It just lets you, it just really puts you on notice. You know, the danger in grabbing hold of these emergent situations.
And they do it so cavalierly.
And do it so cavalierly and impose these extremely draconian methods. We look back now almost 100 years later and say, what were they thinking? Answer, they weren't thinking at all.
Are you talking about the PDN opinion piece?
Yeah. So that's Jacobson versus Massachusetts, an extremely powerful tool.
Now, I don't know if you thought about this, Bob, which I'm sure you have already. There's another part of the story of these 3 that they always seem to leave out. And it's kind of a really silly inconvenience I think is important. They're all waiting for the Attorney General to make a decision on religious exemptions. And they're sitting on it. And I know why they're sitting on it, because they know that they can't win. They can't win with it.
Yeah.
So why are these teachers being told that they can't work if they can't even make their minds up at the Attorney General's office?
So you know that they've applied for a religious exemption. No, I was told by a teacher that the Department of Education says we're not entertaining religious exemptions.
See, that's another thing they talked about at the roundtable last Tuesday.
We're not entertaining religious exemptions. Yeah, so that's really important because the way I read it, read all of the laws on point, that a well asserted religious exemption, and that doesn't mean the Pope says, would stand up against these draconian measures. There would have to perhaps be some kind of an accommodation. I suspect that mandatory testing would work and would be sufficient to allow someone to not take the vaccination because of the religious exemption. But to just say we're not entertaining it, it's just arbitrary followed by arbitrary.
And it's also inconsistent with what all the other agencies are saying.
Yeah. Okay, I notice somebody wants to chime in on this one. It's Brian Chargaloff or Brianna Chargaloff?
Brian
Chargaloff. I got to do a spelling lesson on Chargaloff here, but no problem, Jose. I'm going to come back and I'm going to give the blue star to this editorial today, but I'm going to have to explain why I'm giving that editorial the blue star. Brian, what can you tell me about Jacobson versus Massachusetts, Buck versus Bill, draconian measures at the Department of Education?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. As long as you've been here, I guess you got to get a spelling lesson on Chargaloff, but it's okay.
Not me. I can spell Chargaloff.
I know. I'm just playing with you.
All right.
But yeah, I just wanted to call in and chime in on the the religious exemption. And I called before and I asked you about the Department of Administration only accepting medical exemptions and not religious exemptions. But yes, the employees, we turned in our religious exemption request before the deadline, as according to the governor's executive order and everything, and we're still waiting. Even after the roundtable, we're still waiting. So we're not allowed to. We're prohibited from reporting to work, even though we're ready, willing, and able, because of the mandatory testing, which they're saying is an accommodation, but that's an accommodation that none of us had any input. They're just making it a blanket accommodation.
I got it, yeah.
So, yeah, I just want to chime in that, we're still waiting, and some of us teachers have used up all our sick leave. One of the 3 teachers resigned from the department because of all this after 19 years of government service.
So have you consulted with counsel, Brian?
Not yet, but I've done my correspondence with the EEOC. I've corresponded with the department's EEOC officer. I've done my due diligence on reasonable accommodations under religious, sincerely held religious belief. So I've done my part. It's just it seems like they're hesitant to meet with me on a case-by-case basis, as stated in the Civil Rights Act about reasonable accommodation. Right now, Your Honor, there are 2 types of unvaccinated employees working. One of them has exemptions for everything, and they're continuing to work like we've been doing. And the other unvaccinated type of employee contracted COVID but can't test for 90 days, but is still allowed to work, just like we've always been working. So there's the inconsistency with testing right there.
You know, it seems to me that the department's position is much less viable by denying even the opportunity to have your religious exemption request considered than by entertaining the request and denying it.
Yes.
And I mentioned a little earlier when I started talking about this, I'm not familiar with anything in GovGuam law that allows the superintendent to place someone on leave without pay without some sort of an adjudication. There's a provision for an immediate suspension of 20 days. As a disciplinary action, a person can be suspended for 30 days, but just because the superintendent has a pen and can sign his name, it's the authority to put people on leave without pay. I don't know. I haven't researched it, but it sounds strange to me.
My research, I haven't come across anything, and according to what I read, that's illegal to place an employee on leave without pay, given religious or any of the other types of
I'm not even getting to the religious exemption. I'm just wondering under what circumstance or under what authority the superintendent can say you're going to go on leave without pay and you're not getting paid anymore indefinitely.
I haven't come across that in my 24 years in the government.
Because if the superintendent can do that, then you got a really crappy personality. So you need to spend some time at home studying books about studying how to win friends and influence people, right?
I agree.
Yeah. I agree. And you can't come back to work until you finish reading that book. So okay, Brian. Well, stand tall. Be vigorous. I'm not going to say no one should take the vaccination, but there's so many questions out there about the vaccination and so much really poor policy that has evolved in the process of dealing with this vaccination that I can certainly empathize with you and the other two and your religious exemptions. I didn't want to take it either. I wanted to wait for the abortion-free vaccine, but I had to compromise my principles for medical reasons. Otherwise, I'd probably be right out there with you.
I understand. And yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, that abortion-free vaccine, but it's just a matter of choice, that's all. And following the laws, that's all we're asking for.
Glad you called, Brian.
Thanks, Your Honor.
I'll keep my fingers crossed for you.
Right, thank you.
Short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are. We've been talking vaccines, teachers, authority, Buck versus Bell. What's the name of that abortion-free vaccine, Jose?
I can't remember the name of it. It still hasn't been approved yet, though, but there's one.
It's supposed to be out at the end of this year.
Yeah.
See if you can find that name for me, huh?
But I do find it interesting that in 1 year, there's now a mandatory 4 shots for this pandemic. It's incredible. 4 shots in 1 year.
Yeah. And you look at the way our government's handled it. You know, the one that I like the best is, you know, we've got to stop the spread of this disease. So we're not going to allow people to dine in restaurants because the crowds make it too easy for the disease to spread. So in order to go into a restaurant for a meal, you have to have had at least the first Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, which means, and I've used this example so many times, I could get the vaccine at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday and go to 2 rave for Sunday breakfast or Saturday breakfast at 7 o'clock, and I'd be fine. So it's not about the spread of disease. It's about the spread of the governor's authority to force this down people's throats. And when we have the superintendent of education who comes out and says, well, we're following the governor's mandate. The 3 teachers, so what? Teaching the kids, it'll work itself out, et cetera. The main thing is we're following the governor's mandate. These things should not happen in a free society. I'm not sure of what authority the governor has to put someone on leave without pay. But given what Brian told us here, the fact that the the director of administration has refused to consider, not refused to grant, but refused to consider religious exemptions, ought to entitle the teachers to certain kinds of safe employment protection. As an example, if you can't, set a deadline, let the teachers go on leave without pay. Let's say we'll give the Attorney General a month, go on leave without pay, and if he doesn't come up with his appointment, start paying him.
There's another question, and I'm not very familiar with unions, but isn't all teachers required to be a part of the teachers' union? And is this, they say it's a part of your work requirement to have to get the shot? Mm-hmm. Isn't there a contract that you have before you enter the workplace?
Yeah, well, this is a story on the GFT. The GFT is the exclusive bargaining agent for all teachers, which means that teachers can't start little groups themselves to bargain with the superintendent or with the board. Only the GFT can do that. And the GFT has to bargain for and represent all teachers, whether they're union members or not. This is the most dismal performance I've seen from the union since the days of Matt Rector, which was the sump. Yeah. So, yeah, this is a condition of employment, and one would think that the GFT would be leading the charge on this, but everything that I've seen, and they haven't even been speaking out much.
They're playing politics, that's why.
Well, they're just going along with the flow, and that's the last thing that a labor union should do. I've had some experience myself. I was in at the very beginning of the GFT. I'm proud to say that at one time I was the chief rabble-rouser for the GFT when we negotiated the first board union contract in 1970. It was a hard uphill fight, but we got a contract that really secured and protected the rights of the teachers, which had not been there hadn't been much feeling for the rights of teachers until that time. And one of the things that a union does, a teachers union, it's supposed to be militant. It's not, if there are any hard questions, you weigh in on the side of the teachers, not the administration. So I don't know where the administration is, where the union is on this, or either that or I know exactly where they are. They're in the superintendent's pocket, which is kind of like what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to give this editorial that appeared yesterday. I'm going to break with tradition. It's not today's editorial, it's yesterday's editorial, and it gets the coveted blue star. Now, Brian and the other two, and probably a lot of folks are out there saying, what the hell is wrong with Bob? Has he lost his mind? Giving a blue star on that editorial that advocates firing teachers? And the answer is no, and I've explained this before. What I'm looking for in an editorial is not the fluff that we've been furnished in the last few weeks, fasten your seat belts when you get in, look both ways before you cross the street, and this kind of stuff. Let's everybody gets vaccinated because it's good for the island, this kind of stuff. It's a hard-hitting editorial. It picks an important issue. It lays out the issue. It tells us why it's taking the particular position on the issue. It takes a stand, and there's a call to action. It's got everything in it that a good editorial should have. And I've mentioned before that taking a position that I don't like is not necessarily a bar to achieving the Blue Star Award for good editorials. Probably a lot easier to get a Blue Star if you say something that I do like, just between us. But no, saying something that, taking a position that I don't like is not a bar to getting the Blue Star. So yesterday's paper, when I read yesterday's paper, I said, man, they should have saved it till Monday. They should have saved it until tomorrow. This is a real editorial, unlike some of the fluff that both papers have been running lately.
So you can say something very bad, but very well.
If you say it very well, yeah. If you appear to know what you're talking about.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the card for today. I start out with a really, really important item on the card. It's called the facts versus the narrative. The alternative title for this item on the card is Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Yeah, I'll repeat that. I didn't mispronounce it. Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Pogus, Anexa, rice, yeah. Second item on the card is I probably get scalped when I leave the building here by a group of militant females or female wannabes or whatever. This is Will Thomas versus the Gals, which is something that a word which used to be a regular part of our vocabularies,
We won't say what the late, great Rush used to say, the feminazis.
The feminazis. But we used to use, we're going to go out tonight. We're going to take the gals out to dinner. You're not supposed to use that word anymore.
So was the song Buffalo Gals in your area?
Yeah.
Which come out tonight?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so gals is a word that you're not supposed to use anymore. And then one of the words that we use quite frequently, we use a lot now, but we use it for a totally different meaning. Gay. Yeah, so did you take the gals out for dinner last night? Yeah, how'd it go? Hey, we had a really gay time. Really? I thought you said you took the gals along. All right, next item on the card, tall tales versus separatists, which is going to be on the card for a little while. And then I've got, this one's a little hard to figure out, Mark Smith versus the San Nicolases.
That one I can't wait.
And then Chicago versus Fox. And this is Fox with a double X. And this is a little bit more of justice for Juicy. I'm really concerned about Juicy, what's his last name?
Smollett.
Yeah, Juicy Smollett. I suspect a lot of people think he really didn't get justice. Chicago versus Fox. And then I've got BLM versus hate crimes. Okay, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Now, before I got into this, I want you to tell me what color my shirt is, Jose.
Your shirt is... I know the answer to this, but it looks very orange.
Well,
Change my mind.
It can't possibly be orange. Have you been to an optometrist lately or an ophthalmologist?
Not lately.
Yeah. It can't, you're not colorblind, are you?
No, I'm not colorblind.
No, my shirt can't possibly be orange. I'll tip you off. It's red. My shirt is red. Now, for you folks out there in Facebook land, take a look. That's what a red shirt looks like. Okay. And I gotta explain a little bit. You know, I'm not Irish, but my family paid a lot of attention to Irish politics. And, you know, because of the bitterness between the Irish Republic and what's called Northern Ireland, the 6 counties of Northern Ireland, inhabited by the Orangemen, I would never wear an orange shirt. I'll wear a red shirt, but I will never wear an orange shirt. So the shirt that I'm wearing today, it's got to be orange. Okay, I know somebody wants to talk about the color of my shirt. And let's see, it's signed off.
I wanted him to listen to what you had to say, but he said your shirt is salmon. But, I mean, that's culturally offensive.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not salmon. It's red. Is there such a thing as a red salmon? There's such a thing as a red snapper. I know that, yeah. So rather than salmon, it's a red snapper. Okay, so we've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And you'll probably recall that Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the Daily News on November 26. Red rice isn't red, it's orange. And then he says the world is undergoing rapid change and cultures are experiencing traumatic shocks as cherished myths are destroyed by cruel realities. Guam is no exception, and we are far enough into the 21st century to face a very ugly fact concerning the false basis concerning something very central to the Chamorro belief system, and since it very much concerns feasting associated with a holiday season, now is a good time as any to acknowledge a painful truth. There is no such thing as red rice. Now, I won't go that far, but what we call red rice, I'm probably going to have to say is red rice, just like my shirt is red. It's not orange. The achoti-colored rice traditionally eaten on Guam is orange and not red. Calling it red rice for centuries does not make it red. It's orange, and a color wheel is not needed to see this. So please, let's stop looking foolish by calling it red rice, and let's call it by its proper name, orange rice. Now, Paul's a really clever guy, and maybe what he has put forward here is a little bit more clever than what we first picked up on when we read this column. So Paul is saying, it ain't red, it's orange. And I'm saying, my shirt ain't orange, it's red. And I explained to you why it has to be red, because it's for my it's because of my affinity for the Irish and my opposition to for the travesty called the 6 northern counties of Ireland, Northern Ireland, going all the way back to the Troubles and Derry and Londonderry and the Orange Brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. So I would never wear an orange shirt. Thus, my shirt has to be red. Okay, so that was what Zerzan said. And then we've got Therese Padua. I hope I have that with me here. Oh, yeah. Now we come with Therese Padua Howe, who tells us how, in the Daily News. And here we come up with the agenda. So my agenda is I'm not going to wear an orange shirt because I'm pro-Irish and anti-orange. So here's what Therese says. Therese Padua Howe. She says he's a prolific writer, and he objected to calling red rice by that name, proposing to call it by the U he sees most often, orange rice. Some readers on social media question why the PDN was even entertaining the topic when there are more pressing issues at hand. And I was tended to be a little dismissive of it myself until I saw this as the perfect allegory for the facts, for the truth versus the agenda, for the truth versus the narrative. My narrative that I would never wear an orange shirt, therefore my shirt's got to be red. And here it is. The majority vehemently rejected the proposal, such as Cecile Chargalov's comment on a post on 671. Why change traditions? It's like, here we go again, being invaded and changing what is naturally ours to what they think it should be because they don't like it. Forget about what color it really is. I've got an agenda, Cecile Chargalov says. How dare you try to impinge on my agenda? I don't care if it's not the color of their liking or if it's not dark enough for them. I don't care if it's not. She just doesn't care. Just leave what is traditional thing to be just that, tradition. Others offer an explanation for the name. In an interview, Zerzan said he was prompted to write the letter following a Thanksgiving luncheon he attended last week. He said that he was shocked after 30 years of living on Guam to realize that red rice isn't actually that color. Once you see that it's orange, you really can't bring yourself to call it red. If you want to be factual, if you want to comply with the narrative, then it doesn't bother you at all. Miley, let's see. Then she goes on to say, so I think, truth is, he goes on to say, so I think, truth is more important than tradition. The 69-year-old former science teacher, et cetera, did admit, blah, blah, blah. And then we get back to the narrative, winding up the column. Judging from the response, however, the people were not amused, the people. The only thing Chamorros are more protective of than family is our food. Red rice is red, regardless of the reddish-orange hue, said Paula Lujan Kaneni, Chamorro cookbook author and founder of Guam Mama Cooks. So there you have it. The initiative versus the facts. That's why, according to my initiative, according to my agenda, this shirt that I'm wearing has to be red. It cannot be orange.
I ought to have been more sensitive, Bob.
Say again?
I ought to have been more sensitive.
You should have. You should have taken into my consideration all of the things, all of the things I've been telling you about my narrative. And then when I was looking at this, I ran across something that Paul Zerzan wrote in 2016. So, the narrative coming along and throwing cold water on the narrative is not something that he's an amateur at. And on December 4, 2016, this is what he said in the Daily News. In his December 2 column, quote, decolonization is a form of justice, Michael Lujan Bavacqua wrote, quote, the native inhabitants of Guam have long been denied a fair shot at deciding their political destiny, and a decolonization plebiscite will represent an important symbolic moment. Okay, it's already halftime. I'm going to come back to Paul's column right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More help on the way. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. President Biden declaring a major disaster in Kentucky after Friday's deadly tornadoes, paving the way for more federal resources as many areas look at total devastation.
Layer after layer of debris, parts of buildings on top of cars, on top of more cars. I talked to an engineer this morning, a civil engineer who was evaluating the damage, and his words were complete devastation as he walked by. As the death toll continues to rise, we talked to a number of people who survived that night, who wrote it out in their houses, which are still largely destroyed. Here's what some survivors had to say about that Friday night.
It was sad and scary.
There's 4 or 5 houses here. It's gone, and that whole section of the neighborhood, there's nothing left.
That report from Fox's Steve Harrigan in Kentucky. Arkansas also facing a major post-storm cleanup in some areas. Governor Asa Hutchinson.
This is a very unusual event. It's almost like the tornado going through Arkansas picked cities along the path. Many times they're more rural areas. Here we hit multiple towns, causing enormous loss of homes and businesses. So the recovery is going to be longer.
Governor Hutchinson on CBS's Face the Nation. Some Republicans pointing to a Congressional Budget Office report saying the true cost of President Biden's social spending bill could be as high as $4.9 trillion. This as the White House continues to criticize the 2017 Trump-era tax cuts.
I like giving money back to the taxpayer. I don't like spending more money than we did in World War II, and that's what we're doing right now. This bill, Build Back Better, is $5 trillion. It's not 1.75. It will add $3 trillion to the deficit. When they tell you the bill is paid for, they're lying.
South Carolina GOP Senator Lindsey Graham on Fox News Sunday. America is listening to Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
President Biden hoping a threat of harsh economic sanctions will keep Russia from sending troops into Ukraine.
Over the years, the U.S. and its allies have threatened Russian military aggression with everything from sanctions to aid given to targeted countries. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on NBC's Meet the Press says the president implies the threat to Ukraine means stiffer penalties.
We are looking at and we are prepared to take the kinds of steps we've refrained from taking in the past that would have massive consequences for Russia.
Blinken gave no specifics. He is meeting with G7 allies in England seeking a united front against any Russian incursion. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Meantime, British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying the world's largest economies are united in warning Russia against a Ukraine invasion. That situation dominating talks among a group of 7 foreign ministers in the English city of Liverpool. No word, however, on any specific G7 sanctions. The state of Arizona is deploying the National Guard amid concerns about migrants crossing its border. This as Yuma, Arizona is declaring a local emergency amid a migrant surge impacting that city. Yuma Republican Mayor Douglas Nicholas.
Well, last weekend we had those 6,000 people came over the 4-day period, which overwhelmed the Border Patrol system. And so people were waiting at the border for Border Patrol to pick them up for almost a day, day and a half. And so they just started walking through town and doing what they need to do, take care of humanitarian issues.
Mayor Nicholas on Fox and Friends. Critical acclaim and 2 years of anticipation not helping Steven Spielberg's lavish West Side Story revival at the weekend movie box office. The remake pulling in just $10.5 million in ticket sales. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Dallas, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit Guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
So here we are back after that big halftime show that we really, really like here on Tall Tales. I'm noticing a post from David Densman, who found the word that escaped us, Jose. He said, if you're talking about Novavax, according to my research, even they use the HEK cell lines in texting. So even Novavax it's not going to pass religious muster. Okay, so I left off with an item on the card called Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And I pulled up the controversy about Paul claiming that an obviously orange-colored table dish is called red rice. And he said, you know, it's really not red, it's orange. We should start calling it red. We should start calling it orange rice. And the Daily News, mainly Therese Padua Howe, came back and said, no, you can't call red rice orange just because it's orange. And I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to illustrate how an agenda or a narrative can take the place of a factual determination in today's world, that the narrative is far more important than the actual facts. And I commented on that. And I'm playing with it myself. I'm wearing a shirt here that my agenda, I want you to believe my agenda. Where's the horn, Jose? I want you to believe my agenda, that my fealty for the Irish and the Republic of Ireland forbids me from wearing an orange shirt because it would be seen as support of Northern Ireland, the 6 counties. And I don't ever want to be caught in that situation. So I've had this shirt for a long time. You just can't, you're just not looking at it right. It's obviously a red shirt. I would never wear an orange shirt. So that's the agenda. So when we see people that are supporting the agenda instead of the truth, we can easily, we've got a term for that now. We can say, hey, that guy's red-shirting it, or that guy's red-ricing it. Yeah, looking at something that's orange and swearing that it's red, and becoming offended at anyone who tells the truth because you're going against the agenda and against tradition, etc. So once again, you scored, Paul. And then I stumbled across another place where Paul scored. This is his letter to the editor on November 4, 2016, where he says in his December 2 column, "Decolonization is a form of justice." Michael Lujan Vivacqua wrote, "The native inhabitants of Guam have long been denied a fair shot at deciding their political destiny, and a decolonization plebiscite will present an important symbolic moment in reversing hundreds of years of colonial disenfranchisement." This is completely false. That's the problem with Paul. Weasel words. He just never comes out and tells you what's on his mind, right?
Not you, maybe. It's completely.
Yeah, it's completely false. When the native inhabitants of Guam petitioned the U.S. Congress for and were granted U.S. citizenship, this was a clear act of political self-determination. They chose, by overwhelming majority, a political destiny as Americans. Why is this not mentioned in his column? Because Michael Bavacqua was red-shirting it or red-ricing it. That would have interfered with the narrative. In 1982, a plebiscite was held on Guam. At that time, the overwhelming majority of voters on Guam were Chamorro, therefore native inhabitants. This plebiscite was conducted in strict accordance with UN rules on decolonization, including the requirement for universal adult suffrage. Given 5 choices, also in accordance with UN requirements that clearly state the population of a colony is entitled to any political status of their choosing. No, it's only 3, right? The voters overwhelmingly rejected independence and chose a new status as Commonwealth. Why is this not mentioned in this column? And of course, we know the reason. Michael Bavacqua was red-shirting or red-ricing.
I never knew that.
The Commonwealth?
The plebiscite thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that the one that included combining with CNM? No, that was different.
Totally different issue. Yeah, Commonwealth, which actually is not a new political status. It's actually what I've been talking about. Remaining an unincorporated territory, working on improvements in our relationship with the national government. Garzan goes on, having made a decolonization choice of Commonwealth, the next step was for the people of Guam to write a constitution. The process was sabotaged by a small group that was unhappy with the voters' choice. The group pushed through legislation that called for a new vote, limiting the eligibility of voters and limiting the voting choice to 3 choices. Both of these are in blatant violation of UN decolonization requirements. Why is this not mentioned in his column? You know why, Jose?
Red rice.
He's red-ricing and red-shirting. The result is the decolonization process has been completely halted by this illegal legislation. Guam is considered a colony because it's on the UN list of colonies. In order to decolonize Guam and have it removed from the UN list of colonies, Guam must follow UN rules. That is why the process has been halted by illegal ancestor requirements for voting and by illegal limitations on political status choices. Why is this not mentioned in his column? Bavacqua should also know that prior to Spanish colonization, the caste system denied the Manatsang caste basic human rights. Many historians maintain that the Manatsang were the original inhabitants of Guam, shorter and darker in appearance, and the Matua class invaded and conquered them, maybe in 1100 A.D. If so, colonial disenfranchisement did not begin with the Spanish, and since all Chamorros have some Spanish ancestry, there really are no true native inhabitants left for Bavacqua to lead in liberation. All of the above facts can be verified on the internet or at the university. Whatever his political views or philosophical orientation, I think Bavacqua is obligated to know the facts and not propagate blatant untruths that can be disproven in a court of law. Well, if you go to a court of law, could you wear an orange shirt, Jose? I don't think so. I think the bailiff would kick you out of the courtroom, because we all know that there's no tradition for orange shirts, and it's offensive to the Irish, right? All right, let's go on to Will Thomas versus the Gals. And this is something that ran in Red State. Teammates of transgender UPenn swimmer continue to speak out, and they may show conservatives a way forward. A lot of history was made at the Zippy Invitational Swim Meet in Akron on December 3. Leah Thomas, swimming for the University of Pennsylvania, took 38 seconds off the women's 650 freestyle event. And the author's name is Strife. He says, as my colleague Jim Thompson pointed out in an article called Breaking, Dude Breaks Women, as you were, dude beats women at swimming because he's a biological dude. I think you know where this is going. 38 seconds is a long, long time in swimming. Watching the video, Leah appears to have won by 2 laps. College varsity swimmers, and he wins by 2 laps. And Jim also gave away the punchline. Leah is a man. Yeah, can men swim better than women, Jose?
Only if they're wearing red bathing suits.
Leah is a man. Leah, back when he was still Will, swam for 3 years with UPenn's men's team and was good enough to make second team All-Ivy League. Then he took a year off, during which he decided he needed to get in touch with his feminine side and started swimming for UPenn's women's team as Leah. As has been reported by Outkick, the women on UPenn team are not happy. Why wouldn't they be happy if one of their sisters did so well? They're transphobic. They should all be kicked off the swimming team. They are devastated. Quote, pretty much everyone individually has spoken to our coaches about not liking this. Our coach, Michael Schnurr, just really likes winning. He's like most coaches. I think secretly everyone just knows it's the wrong thing to do. Secretly. We have to keep it a secret that letting a man swim on the women's swimming team and win by 2 laps is wrong. We have to keep that secret. The female, as you were, when the whole team is together, we have to be like, oh my gosh, go Leah, that's great, you're amazing. It's very fake, she added. The Ivy League is not a fast league for swimming. So that's why it's particularly ridiculous that we could potentially have an NCAA champion. The NCAA champion in women's 1760. That's unheard of coming from the Ivy League. on paper, if Leah Thomas gets back down to Will Thomas best times, those numbers are female world records. When he was a man, his times would have been female world. But, you know, the poor guy couldn't, the poor gal couldn't compete because he was a man. That's just not fair. Faster than all the times Katie Ledecky went in college. Faster than any other Olympian you can think of. His times in 3 events would be female world records. Even though the UPenn swimmers have been told not to speak to the media on this subject. Yeah, you gals can't talk about this. Sisterhood is powerful. If anybody from the media asks you anything about Leah, all you have to say is this: our strength is our diversity. And the media will just shut up immediately, because if they're any part of the mainstream media, the media cartel, they say the same damn thing themselves. Instead of writing the truth in their newspapers, they go with this: our strength is our diversity. We're inclusive. We're looking for equity. Even though, let's see, a second swimmer did reach out. She said they feel so discouraged because no matter how much they work put in, they're going to lose. Women can't swim as fast as men. Usually they can get behind the blocks and know they're out-trained and know they out-trained all their competitors and they're going to win and give it all they've got, the source said. Now they're going to have to go behind the blocks knowing no matter what, they do not have a chance to win. I think that's really getting to everyone. Akron was an absolute beatdown by Thomas, but it wasn't without disgust from fans who were in the building watching the meet. Pool and school records drop one after another. Usually everyone claps, everyone is yelling and cheering when someone wins a race. Leah touched the wall, and it was just silent in there, the source said during a phone interview. When Penn swimmer Anna Kalandadze finished second, the crowd erupted in applause. The source said that after the 200-yard freestyle, Thomas could be overheard bragging. That was so easy. I was cruising, Leah Thomas allegedly said. According to the source, Thomas was unhappy with her time after the 500 race, but while standing in front of teammates, made sure to mention, quote, "At least I'm still number one in the country." Well, obviously she's number one in the country because she's got a clear physical advantage, having gone through male puberty and getting to train with testosterone for years. Of course you're number one in the country when you're beating a bunch of females. That's not something to brag about. The infiltration of men who, quote, identify as women and women's athletics is becoming sadly commonplace. For instance, Mission College in Santa Clara has a 6'8" player who is now playing college ball as both a man and a woman. Now you see why I started out with Paul Zerzan versus anti-racism? The narrative is this, that there's really no difference between men and women except the difference that society assigns. And some people really are misgendered. Nature made a mistake. And the society should correct it. So if a person really feels like they are a woman, then they have the ability to become women by nothing more than snapping their fingers. And if they're women, why can't they compete in women's sports? That's the agenda. The fact is these poor gals at the University of Pennsylvania know they can never win anything. And the whole the whole situation being absolutely silly, and everybody going around like the university told the girls, you can't talk to the media about this. That's where we are. The era of systemic racism. Okay, next I've got Tall Tales versus the Separatists. And in the meantime, I've got another Joe who wants to talk about gender identity. Go ahead, another Joe.
Okay, I'm not sure why. Obviously, it's because it keeps coming up in the media, the left-leaning Democrat-leaning media. I have the impression that democracy was a matter of majority rules, and that people were really mistreated. There was some consideration, but you're not going to have the minority run everyone else's life, because then it's not really democracy, is it? It's some sort of an elitist perspective when a small percentage, runs the majority. So if they really wanted to have some reasonable compromise, they would have the perspectives of this is an issue of in school-age children, parents' rights, and in regards to the college level, then this is really really more of the woke pandering. So, but even so, I would guess that they're not really going to have a majority of support. So it constantly becomes an issue of they feel mistreated, except the previous cases where you brought up that even within the increasingly growing acronym, the different groups, demographics are opposed to each other. So I'd say while they're sorting their issues out, go with what is the understood standard, to try and proving true on the regards to biological. They can call it. They want to call it a sign at birth. They should also add genetically or gender proven or something more articulate.
Well, why bother? I mean, we've all known that men and women are not the same. We've known that ever since we were small children. And we've known that men and women have different capabilities. And men are stronger, faster, bigger than women. Now there are individual differences within the group. There are some women who are really good athletes, and there are a lot of men that can't even pick up a football. But as a whole, we've known these things. But the object here is to convince us of the things that we've known to be true really aren't true. It's called gaslighting. Another Joe.
Yeah.
And another Joe. Patience. Yeah. So in a democracy, we do favor the majority ruling. But how the majority goes about ruling is not as easily defined. I'm going to read a quote from Abraham Lincoln that tells you an awful lot about what's going on right now. Abraham Lincoln in Ottawa, Illinois, on the 21st of August, 1858 said, "With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. Consequently, he who molds public sentiment goes deeper than he who enacts statutes or pronounces decisions. He makes statutes and decisions possible or impossible to be executed." Now, that goes both ways. So in a democratic society, there are huge efforts to influence public sentiment. I talk about it all the time here on Tall Tales. And what has influenced public sentiment here in our situation is critical theory, critical race theory, neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism, and it goes all the way back to the Frankfurt School. Surely you've heard me talk about that before, another Joe.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so, you know, the theory propounded by the Frankfurt School is that we have to attack the institutions, the capitalist institutions, because we know there will never be a workers' revolt. And the way we do that, we debunk them and we tear them down. So they're one of the things they're tearing down is sports, you know, which used to be something we were really proud of. Amateur sports, amateur athletics. One of the happy days of my life was at the end of my football season in my sophomore year. I was awarded a letter. You know, that was really an accomplishment. So nowadays, of course, we want females to play football. If we don't let them play football, we're sexist and we're this, that, and the other thing. So by getting into this nationwide pretending about sex and race and all these other things, we're loosening people from their anchors, another Joe, and it makes it much easier to move the population towards Marxism. And as you can see on the national scene, we have moved a tremendous pace in that direction already. I got a break and head for Wrigley Field, another Joe.
Thanks for your time, Bob.
Yeah.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, here we are at Wrigley Field. I kind of stand out here out in the bleachers wearing my bright red shirt. I expect everybody, all the baseball players saying, "Oh man, look at that guy in his red shirt there." But anyhow, I'm kind of interested to see what's going on here because the most dangerous man in the ballpark is now on the phone. So, Carl, can you swim?
Yeah, I can swim, kind of.
Yeah. Have you ever won any records? Or...
No, not the last I checked. I haven't won any records, and for sure I haven't won any records as a female.
Oh, okay. Well, you're probably. Do you feel like you're qualified to talk on this subject anyhow, Carl?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, maybe I'm not qualified. I'm not trans and I'm not female, so I don't know.
Well, give it a shot. We'll give it a try.
Yeah, just a quick comment before I get on to this trans issue regarding Paul Zerzan. I just wonder if Paul Zerzan is just doing a masterful job of trolling everyone on the island.
Well, he really did. It took me a while to catch on that this is the perfect allegory for what we're seeing right now. That he comes up with a really innocuous statement of fact, and unrighteous people rise up in righteous indignation because how dare you? You're going against our agenda. It's tradition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think a pretty good example, of how where we are now as a society. It's really it's strange. I mean, in the big picture, who cares? If someone's at a party and they want to call it orange rice, I don't care. I call it red rice because that's what I've always called it.
Well, and a way to deal with that, if you were in a position where you had to or wanted to, you could say, yeah, the color of that dish is orange, no question about it. But we call it red rice, and when we call it red rice, everybody understands. So there's probably no need to change, but it really is orange. That isn't what Therese Padua said. There's anything Chamorros care about, boy, it's their food.
Yeah, and maybe at the time it was introduced, orange wasn't really a common color, so that was just, red was like the closest thing to it.
Gifino Chamorro tadza na palabra orange, guaha e palabra, e dos na palabra color kahit. So if you want to say orange in Chamorro, you say color of an orange.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's kind of beside the point. I think the real point here is that, you look at something that's orange, but you can't really call it orange, because if you call it orange, you're going to be ostracized, canceled, etc. Because you're breaking with the narrative, you're breaking with the agenda.
Yeah, I just got a feeling when they named it, many.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, Carl.
Oh yeah.
That's not what I'm driving at. Because the facts make no difference to someone who has an agenda or someone who has a narrative. The reason that we call it something doesn't matter. It's what we call it that matters, because it's part of our agenda, and you got to do it. If you're not going to go along with our agenda, it's just like the swimming coach, just like the coach at UPenn saying, you can't talk to the media. And that was the message for Paul Zerzan. He shouldn't be talking to the media about orange rice.
Yeah, he kind of defied the narrative. So that's pretty typical of Paul, I think. Yeah, about this trans swimmer. I just find it. I remember I was listening to the news about it, and one of the reactions on the left was, hearing some of the complaints about this trans swimmer breaking, that, I guess, local record by 38 seconds was, well, they just need to train harder. How exactly do you train harder to knock off 37 seconds?
2 laps.
Yeah, that's insane. That's just crazy. That's crazy talk. And I was wondering, since, to the left, men and women are interchangeable, then why are we tinkering around on the edges like this? Why not just let men compete with women? Let there be a league where it's just open competition.
Like the 6'8" basketball player who's playing in both men's and women's sports leagues.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, you know the reason we don't do that. We've always separated girls and boys, and the reason is to give the girls a chance. That's the reason for this federal legislation that says whatever you do for the boys, you got to do for the girls. The federal legislation doesn't say if you do it for the boys, you got to let the girls play on those teams too.
That's Title VI?
It's Title something or other, yeah. So if you're going to have basketball for men, you got to have basketball for women. Because women basketball players are not, as a group, you know, are not going to be able to compete with men.
Yeah, I was just being sarcastic, you know, but that you know, with the attitude being that men and women are interchangeable and there's really no difference. It's all social constructs, and it's just trained, you know, whatever differences are there, trained into them through society. You know, there's an easy way to prove that. You know, just have a league where men and women are all together. You know, they don't need to destroy all men and women's sports. Just have one separate league where men and women compete together. Just open competition. We'll see what happens. It's not going to be pretty.
Not at all. That's true, Carl.
Yeah, and you know that swimmer, the trans swimmer. You know, if men and women are really equivalent, then he could just openly come out and say, I'm identifying as a woman, but, you know, I believe men and women are equal, so I'm just going to stay and compete with the men, you know, because we're equal. So I'm going to prove it, but, you know, that's not what happened.
No.
Yeah, well, anyway, that's my comment for the day on that. It's we live in strange times, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we've just got to be on the lookout for systemic racism wherever we see it, and not let anybody put a gag rule on us, Carl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if anybody tries to put a gag rule on us, man, I'll eat my red shirt.
Okay, Bob. I'll talk to you later.
Good talking to you, Carl. Our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. Okay. Just about time to head for Churchill Downs. I think I'll start Tall Tales versus Separatists, and if I have to break...
About 10 minutes.
I better break because I got to get something out of my briefcase.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nectac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are heading down the home stretch, and I've got Tall Tales versus Separatists here. This is going to be, it's going to take me several programs to go through this, and I'm going to break with tradition a little bit. I will entertain phone calls mid-narrative, in the middle of my own narrative here, instead of making you wait till the ordinary break, because of the nature of this, and it's going to be so long. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to chime in on this. So what I'm using as the text here is something that came as a supplement to Saturday's, or was it Friday's Daily News? Friday's Daily News, this is what it looks like. It's a 20-page supplement, hard copy, And the cover says, Guam, a territory like no other. And it's full of the workings of what is the shorthand name for it is the Commission on Decolonization, but that's really not the name of it. I wrote a column in Pacific Island Times that you want to make sure you want to pick up if you haven't seen it, talking about the Paper Mache Commission. So the Commission on Decolonization has 11 ex officio members, including the governor and the minority leader and people like that. But they are paper mache. They're, you know, if you put paper mache together and paint it right and paint it the right colors, it looks like it looks real. But you can poke a hole in it because it has no substance. And that's the same with this 11-member commission. They have no substance whatsoever. It's all Melvin Bora all the time. With Michael Bavacqua whispering in his ear. That's what the commission amounts to. That's what I discovered with some sunshine law requests after Melvin Wanpat issued a press release chastising me for using separatist wrong speak at a Rotary Club meeting that I spoke at a Rotary Club meeting, and it was necessary for Wanpat to come back and chastise me and in a press release from that commission, which my sunshine law request showed was never seen, never approved by the commission itself. It was just Wanpat on his own. He did poll 2 of the members of the commission, which is against the open government law. And it was basically Michael Bavacqua that called the shots. So as a paper mache commission, I wound up my column by saying we pretend that we've got a complete orchestra, but all we really have is a one-man band. So I guess I've got to do some more sunshine law here to find out where this came from, but it looks like the one-man band put out this 20-page commission primarily propaganda in favor of separatism. And I will show you why I say that. Before I do, I notice I've got a Ken. I know who that Ken is. It's the other Governor Leon Guerrero. Yeah. Go ahead, well, Governor.
How are you today?
Doing great, Ken.
Hold on a second. Let me turn this up here.
You turned off your phone, Ken. Oh, that was short.
It was very brief.
Yeah. There's a man of few words. He gets to the point, and that's it. Okay, Ken, if you call back, I'll stop what I'm doing to pick up on you. So, yeah, there's this 20-page supplement, and as I did when I started this on Friday, the first thing I want to do is set the tone. And that the tone is this, that the name of the commission is not the Commission on Decolonization. The name of the commission is Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. So it's not to decolonize the island of Guam. It's not to decolonize the territory of Guam. It's for decolonization and decolonize. Well, maybe it is, but it's for the implementation and exercise of Chamorro self-determination. So that's the name of the commission. So it's not for everybody on the island. It's obviously just for Chamorros and for their self-determination. The rest of us, well, let it go. Ken, you were really brief the last time you called.
Yeah, I'm in a bad cell zone, unfortunately. But basically, you know, in all the years I've been dealing with the commission, it just amazes me how they live in their own bubble, and they think that they represent the people. They think in their minds they represent the people of Guam, but I think deep in their hearts they know they don't, because they no matter how many times I prod them, they refuse to do a survey. You know, part of the process of decolonization is, number one, get a mandate. Well, they don't have a mandate. You know, I mean, if you look at, you know, the efforts of Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., they've done a lot of work in the community. They've done a lot of education work, and they've also done, you know, the type of polling so that they can legitimately go to the Congress with a mandate from their people. This group hasn't done anything like that. Every time I bring up the subject, oh yeah, there was a survey done back in the 80s. Well, an entire generation of people has passed away and another one has been born. So those demographics don't hold.
Okay.
Did I lose you again?
I agree with what you say, Ken.
Yeah. So, you know, the only reason this committee exists, as far as I can tell, is to provide politically well-connected insiders with six-figure jobs for doing next to nothing. And when you stop and look at the body of work this organization has put out, they haven't done anything other than take frequent trips 2 or 3 times a year to the United Nations.
And embarrass those of us who live here, like when Tony, what's his name?
Babauta?
Yeah, Tony Babauta.
Yeah, Tony Babauta.
Yeah, went to the United Nations and made that ridiculous speech. And just an embarrassment for the rest of us.
Well, I must have missed that one. The last speeches I've seen were both Josh Tenorio.
That's where he presented a letter.
Of course, Melvin.
Yeah. That's where he presented the letter from the governor. And then I believe he denigrated the military. And the next week she went and pitched something for the military to help out. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, you know, the Committee on Decolonization really needs to study the law, because the first thing that they're going to learn, I pointed out to them that, you know, the law that created the commission is flawed, and I tried to get the legislature to correct the law, and Kelly Marsh was the head of it at that time, and she refused to even meet with me.
What was her name?
Yeah, what is her name?
Was she a senator?
She used to be once upon a time.
Oh, okay. Well, go on, Ken.
But, yeah, you know, I mean, she refused to even meet with me to discuss the topic. And all I was trying to get her to do was to correct the law. Because in order to, you know, there's no status quo committee. And their whole justification at the COD is, well, you know, the law doesn't provide for one. Well, change the law. Oh, we can't do that. Why not? You got the senator right over there. Have her change the law, make a technical correction.
Well, you see, Ken, I have repeatedly said that before we go plunging into this decolonization thing, the first thing we need to determine is if anybody really wants to decolonize. And I've said if we wanted to have a vote on that, I'd be all for it. I don't even care who votes. Even if I don't get to vote, that ought to be the first step, because I know how it's going to come out.
Yeah, I do too, because I did a survey. We did nearly 1,000 people, and it was 87%. Wait a minute, 78% wanted status quo or closer ties with the United States. You know, so and all the time in 2018, when the independence movement was running really strong at the university. Remember when they had that university debate, and it was all around independence or decolonization, as they were framing it.
Uh-huh.
And I only talked with maybe that year, maybe a half dozen people that were in favor of decolonization. And the funny thing was, they were all young, and none of them were registered to vote. And when I asked them why they weren't registered to vote, and they told me, and I'm not kidding, Bob, when I say this, they are not playing that game. I said, what game? We are not kneeling before our oppressor.
Ah.
So voting in a local election somehow is kneeling before the oppressor. The reason we don't have a Guam Constitution is because if we do a Guam Constitution, we're catering to the dance of the oppressor, you know.
Well, once again, Ken, it's the agenda, and you have to know the vocabulary of the agenda or the narrative, and you have to be able to say these things that are grounded in emotion and not reason. Otherwise, you won't be a member of the group.
That's true. Thank God it's a small club, a very small club, and thank God they've got all these weird ideas like voting is engaging in the oppressor process, which I thought was funnier than hell. How are they going to change things if they're not even going to try to do the basic step, which is stand up and be counted?
The United Nations. The United Nations will save them.
No, it's the UNPO is going to save us. Remember, Tina got a resolution passed.
Right.
I think she flew to Belgium and spent a lot of money going to, or something with it. I forget. I think they had a budget of $5,000 to join the UNPO for what it was worth.
Yeah.
It's like North Korea has done so much to liven our burden here.
Right.
Well, on that happy note, I'll let you get back to the show.
Okay, good talking to you, Ken. Thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
So long. So Ken mentioned that the statute was flawed, so I won't really be able to get into this lesson number 2 today, but I do have something really interesting. You know, we played the, was it Freddy Krueger? No, it was Friday the 13th. No, it was Hope Cristobal. The Hope Cristobal video on Friday. If you haven't seen the Hope Cristobal video, I think we probably need to play it once a week, Jose, so that everybody gets a chance to see the face of the independence movement. But Hope, in her tete-a-tete with the infamous Paul Zerzan, said that she was the one that wrote the decolonization bill, the Commission on Decolonization bill. And she did. She was the only sponsor. And it was not a masterpiece of good drafting. It was not codified. It was just sections, and the compiler had to do the codification. But it was vetoed. Governor Gutierrez vetoed the Decolonization Commission bill. And then the legislature overrode it. And I have a letter dated January 23, 1997 from the governor to Speaker Ompinko that kind of ties into what Ken was alluding to. He says, "Dear Speaker Ompinko, enclosed, please find a copy of Substitute Bill 765, vetoed by the governor on December 31 and apparently overridden by the 23rd legislature on January 5, 1997. The bill is entitled An Act to Create the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. This bill was never transmitted to the governor by the Speaker of the 23rd legislature during the legislature's term of office. It was subsequently received at the governor's office under certification and signature of Senator Ted Nelson on January 15, 1997. Yeah.
So if it broke process, does that make it binding?
Well, there's an argument that the overridden bill was never sent back, but no, it would still be binding. There's so much There's so much here. I feel like I've just stumbled in the entrance to a gold mine, you know. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow with more of the battle against systemic racism. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A long recovery ahead. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. President Biden declaring a major disaster in Kentucky after Friday's deadly tornadoes. That allows for more federal resources during a recovery that FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell says will be a long process.
I think right now, again, we want to focus today and the next day on life-saving. We really want to make sure that we find anybody who still might be trapped in the rubble across all of these states. But then it's going to be a long recovery, and we really need to focus on how we're going to help these communities with their immediate needs, their immediate sheltering needs, and then the long-term housing needs that are going to really be needed to help these communities and these families rebuild.
Deanne Criswell on ABC's This Week. Meantime, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas speaking to reporters on Sunday about the devastating impact Friday's tornadoes left on Kentucky.
I saw on site a backpack that was left behind and a pair of shoes. And it represents the tragedy that this tornado has wreaked on this area of Kentucky.
Thousands across Kentucky remain without power. One person dead, 13 others hurt in a drive-by shooting during a candlelight vigil near Houston. This happened around 6:40 p.m. local time Sunday when about 50 people were gathered for a celebration of life in Baytown, about 25 miles west of Houston. The U.S. is not alone in threatening to hold Russia accountable if it invades Ukraine. That's the message from Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
I'm here in Liverpool with the G7 countries. They are equally resolute in their determination to stand against Russian aggression, to ideally deter it, prevent it. And we've made clear as well that there would be massive consequences if Russia commits renewed acts of aggression against Ukraine.
Secretary Blinken on NBC's Meet the Press. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day. Featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom.